What you do?
Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Just Doing. So today we're going to make ugly sweaters, and so we're going to make a Lorax ugly sweater and Grinch. So I hope that you guys enjoy. The first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to take our dressmaker pens and we're going to pen down the orange felt to the sweater. Pinning down the orange felt will help keep your base of your design secure. And also make sure that when you pen it down, you do not pen it to both layers, but only the first layer. So I'm going to take my 4 main pieces of my fox fur and I cut it into 2 smaller pieces for the eyebrows and 2 bigger pieces for the mustache. I'm going to take my pieces and I'm going to lay them flat across the orange felt to lay out my design. The Lorax's eyebrows are arch-shaped. So I'm going to take my 2 pieces that I have for his eyebrows, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take my pen and my pencil. First I'm going to sketch out an arch shape for my eyebrows, and then I'm going to take the pen to darken it up. I'm going to do that to both sides. Following the line, I'm going to cut along the line. Make sure when you're cutting you do not cut the fur and that you cut it using the back side first, because if you cut it the other way you're going to cut off your fur the wrong way. And so I'm just going to pull off the excess, and this is how it should turn out. Next I'm going to take a piece of my mustache, I'm going to flip it over. And so I'm going to take my pencil, my pen, and I'm going to sketch a slit on 3 sides except for 1. And so the side that I'm not going to draw a slant on is a slit, is a part that I'm going to have at the very bottom in the outermost area. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to flip it to the back side, and I'm going to cut along the line to cut out 3 sides. Remember to leave the bottom right and the bottom left side open. So I took some orange felt and I pre-cut it into the shape of an eye to give it the outer part of the eye, and I took an old t-shirt and I cut it into a circle, and then now I'm going to take some pens and I'm going to pen the eyebrows, the eyes, and the mustache down to the base of the sweater. So I pinned down these items because I want to make sure that my placement is right, and so I want to see what it will look like before I sewed everything down. Okay, so everything's looking good so far. So I'm going to take my pen and my pencil and I'm going to shape out the shape of his face and his mouth. So I'm going to make sure that everything is centered, and then I'm going to sketch out the bottom of his mouth. I want to make sure that it is big enough to where you can see it below the mustache. Then I'm going to take a pen and I'm going to darken that in. So next I want his face to be oval, so I'm just gonna sketch out according to the space between his eyebrows and his mustache, and I'm gonna make that oval. and then I'm also going to do the top to make it a little bit oval too. Then I'm just going to take my pen and I'm just going to darken that in. Now that I have his face outlined, I'm going to unpin everything. After I have all the pens taken out, I'm going to cut the shape of the Lorax's head. So here I kind of freehanded, but for some people who aren't good at freehanding, you can just sketch in the spaces in between the head and the mouth. But I'm just going to cut it out according to the lines and the shapes that I have pre-made with the pen. So I'm going to cut out his head. Then I'm going to flip it over right here to make both sides even. So I'm just going to trim it up a little bit. And as you can see, the shape of his head is oval. Now I'm going to do the same with his mouth. I'm just going to follow the pattern that I already set and just continue through freehanding. But again, if you're not good at freehanding, I would suggest to fill in those lines to make everything complete. So now I have the bottom half of his chin, but it's too big and it doesn't fit with the size of his face. So I'm going to trim the sides and fold it in half to make it fit according to the shape of his face. So I'm just going to take my pen and draw a line to where the excess fabric stops, and then I'm just going to cut it. Now that I have my face cut out, I'm going to place everything back onto the base or the face, and I'm just going to make sure that everything fits sizing wise. Alright, everything looks good. So now I'm going to prep the mouth and the face so I can sew it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some pens and I'm going to pen the bottom of the head and the top of the mouth together, but not too far up, just slightly along the edge. So now I'm just going to set everything to the side. I'm going to grab my sewing machine and I'm going to sew the bottom of the head and the top of the mouth together, just right along the edges, just so they could be secure. It's right at the edges, it's not too far up, not too far down, and I'm just gonna cut off the excess thread. And for those of you who aren't comfortable with the sewing machine, you can just sew the bottom of the head and the top of the mouth together just by hand sewing, or you can use some tacky glue. But if you use tacky glue, it's going to take a lot longer to dry and a lot longer to finish the face for the Lorax. But it is for beginners, so it shouldn't be hard to do. Next, I'm going to glue down my eyebrows, and I'm going to use my tacky glue to hold it in place. And I use the tacky glue because I want to make sure that when I get ready to sew, that my eyebrows won't be moving out of place when I get ready to sew it. But again, those of you who are not comfortable with using a sewing machine, you can just use the tacky glue, and it does a pretty good job of holding it to the fabric. Now I'm going to grab my sewing machine and I'm just going to sew along the edge of the eyebrows, making sure that I'm going slow and not catching the feathers in the sewing machine. Now I'm going to grab the mustache and I'm going to put them down with the parts that are not cut on the outer end. And then I'm just going to pin it down to make sure the mustache is secure. So now I'm going to sew down the mustache, and I'm going to start with the upper part of the mustache. So now I'm going to sew down the middle of my mustache, and I'm doing this because I want to secure it down. So this is when I need my yellow thread and my hand sewing needle, and I'm just gonna sew down along the middle of the mustache, and I want to make sure that I'm not getting any excess fur inside of it. So now I'm just going to sew the bottom of the mustache to secure it by the mouth. So now it's time to sew on the nose. So I used the orange button, that's the nose, and I'm just going to use my orange thread and my hand sewing needle. I'm just going to hand sew the nose on. Now that I'm done with the nose, I'm going to grab the eyes that I have from the orange felt, and I'm going to just glue it down. Once that's glued down, I'm going to take my orange thread and my hand sewing needle, and I'm just going to sew around the eye, and I'm just going to keep sewing around the edge of the eye. Take my white thread and my hand sewing needle, and I'm going to sew on the white part of the eye, and I'm just going to stay along the edge, and I'm going to do that for both eyes. Grab my two buttons, and they're kind of shaped like eyes, and I'm going to place them down where I want them to be sewn down at, and I'm just going to sew them in place. For this, I used white thread and a hand sewing needle to sew down the buttons. Again, for people who are not good with sewing or hand sewing, you can always just glue down the eyes and everything using tacky glue. Now I'm just going to grab the sweater and I'm just going to spread it out. Rip off that extra rest. And then I'm going to put some glue on the back of the Lorax. And I'm going to glue it down to the sweater. Next up is the Grinch. For this, I took some paper and I drew out the shape of the Grinch's head, and I'm going to take some pens and I'm going to pen it to the back of the fur. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut around the pattern to make the shape of the Grinch's head. So what you're going to do next is that you're going to take some dressmaker pens and you're going to pen down the eyebrows and the eyes. So when you pen down the eyebrows, you want to make sure that you pen it down to the shape you want his eyebrows to be. So for me, I want his eyebrows to have a little arch in him, like his eyebrows up, so I just penned it that way. Now you're going to take your green thread and your hand sewing needle and you're going to sew down those eyes and eyebrows. So you want to make sure that when you're sewing down the eyes and the eyebrows that you're sewing just along the edge. While you're sewing down the eyes and the eyebrows, you want to make sure that you do not get any extra fur pulled through, because sometimes when you're sewing, it's easy to pull fur through from the front or through the back. So just be mindful of that. Next thing we're going to do is that we're going to sew down the white part of the eyeball. So to make this, I used the old t-shirt and I pre-cut this out into the shape of the eyes. And so I'm just going to take some white thread and a hand sewing needle. I'm just going to sew right along the edge to sew down the white part of the eyes. I went ahead and I sewed the eye button on, so I just took some needle and thread and I hand sewed the button on. to sew on the nose. So I'm just going to take my green button and my green thread and hand sewing needle, and I'm just going to sew on that nose. Now I'm going to take my red cotton thread and I'm going to make a mouth, and so I want the Grinch to be smiling a little bit, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to sew in a mouth to where he's slightly smiling. Again, while you're sewing on the mouth, you want to make sure that you do not pull through too much fur because it can mess up your sewing line, so just be mindful of the fur while you're sewing it on. To make his features more visible, I'm going to trim around his mouth, his nose, and a little bit above his eyes. The Grinch is looking good. So what you're going to do next is that you're going to grab your sweater and your tacky glue, and you're going to put some glue on the back of the Grinch. And you're just going to glue him down. And there you have it, a Grinch ugly sweater. I hope that you guys enjoy. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.